Hello everybody, my name is Andrew Olson. I'm a front-end software engineer, and you're here to learn about accessible JavaScript in action. I'm really excited to be at MidCamp in person this year. I gave this talk at Florida Camp and was able to add a few more slides for it, and also I'll be giving this talk, I'm really excited about it, at Access U, which is an accessibility conference in Austin, Texas. So, a little bit more about myself. I have red hair. I'm wearing dark rimmed glasses. This picture does show, cover it. So I could use this picture. I have long red hair that comes past my shoulders. I used to have kind of a Viking-esque beard, but when my hair's down, definitely Viking-esque. Front-end developer in Chicago suburbs. I've been working with Drupal since about 2008. The team I was joining said we use Drupal, and I was like, oh my gosh, I better figure this out to fit in. And a fun fact about me, I love playing music, and I played in a band at Lollapalooza back in 2008 as well. It's quite an exciting year. You get into Drupal, you play Lollapalooza, good times. I can be found in the Drupalverse as Andrew Ozone. Not really much on Twitter anymore. That's a whole other thing. So, I'm also really excited. I'm a proud member of Alley Talks. So, we put on monthly talks about accessibility in digital. We have a YouTube channel. You can go there and watch. We live stream monthly. So, I encourage you to join the live stream if you have questions. We take that. And we also are completely nonprofit and funded, and we want to do really exciting things like pay our speakers. We sell really cool, I'm wearing actually an Alley Cat t-shirt. We sell t-shirts. If you join the club, this is fresh off. We're going to be having these really cool stickers for only the people that support our group. So please become an Alley Cat Club member. And we have live captioning during our events, so it's all live streamed, and we have a human captioner that does it. And yeah, we are open for a variety of speakers, so we're very inclusive, and it's exciting, and I love our content, and it's a really great group of people. So today, we're going to talk about modals. Modals are also called pop-ups or pop-ins. Next, we're going to talk about menus, specifically mega menus. And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about type ahead, also called autocomplete, and then we'll wrap up. So before I get started, I have a comic here. And as I was putting this talk together, I was reading the Sunday paper, and I'm a big fan of this comic. It's called Pearls Before Swine. And so I'm going to go through and read the panels here. So, Pearls Before Swine is there's a very caustic rat that's very pessimistic about the world, and then there's Pig, who's very naive, and so a lot of these comics are just the interaction between the two. So, in the first panel, there's Rat and Pig, and they're climbing up this hill, and there's a sign with an arrow that says, "Wise ass on the hill." So, Pig climbs to the top, Rat stays at the bottom. And Pig says, at the very top of the hill there is a donkey, hence the wise ass. And Pig says, "Oh great wise ass, I need help with a problem." And the wise ass says, "What is it, my son?" And Pig says, "I try something new and I fail, and I quit. So I try something else new, and I fail, and I quit. And try something else new, and fail, and fail, and fail." And then the wise ass says, "So you try something only once, you naturally fail. And you immediately quit and try something new. Don't you think the problem is rather obvious?" And Pig in the next panel screams at the top of his lungs, "Trying is the root of all failure." And in the very last panel, Pig is at the bottom of the hill talking to Rat, and he says, "Then he cried and jumped off the mountain." So I was like, this is perfect for this talk. This is how I feel about accessibility. This is how I feel about Drupal in general, is trying and failing. So that was my inspiration, and I hope you enjoyed it. And so what I wanted to do is, if you notice in that last panel, Pig was nude, right? So I thought it would be great if we could all pick a nice t-shirt for Pig. What I want to do is go through an example here. So after I read that comic, I went online shopping to buy a shirt, and I noticed these interactions, and it was a really great example. So I want to caveat this with Threadless.com. I really like Threadless.com. I'm not picking on them in any way here. And actually, what we'll find is they're doing some really interesting, great stuff. But what I want to do is I want to go through the arc of more just storytell a marketing campaign. So we as Drupalists, we as site builders, we as technologists have to work with the marketing team, the analytics team, as well as to develop something and pull this off, right? So what I want to do is we're going to walk through the Threadless site and kind of see these interactions and just pay attention to that. And then we're going to go through it again and again and really pick it apart. So to get Pig this t-shirt, we go to Threadless.com, and about 3 seconds in, imagine this modal pops in, right? So this is my first time at the site, and I'm like, well, I just came here, and all of a sudden I just get this interruption, right? So I'm going to click to dismiss. I want to keep shopping. I don't even know if I like these t-shirts, but I'm just going to keep going. So I go through the site on a few things, and I notice something in the lower left corner. Does anybody else see like something? I'm like, something's following me along. And sure enough, there it is. It's Spin to Win. That was the first pop-in that came in. So at this point, I thought their t-shirts were pretty cool. So you got me. I kind of want that discount, right? So I go ahead and click on the OK Spin to Win, and bam, it unlocks 20%. Hey, that's not too bad. And then it's like, yeah, you have 20%, but you got to give us an email. And I'm like, okay, sure, that makes sense. I got to get this. But then the modal refreshes. It actually stays in that same modal. It doesn't pop and go away and come back. They said, oh, we actually really need your phone number as well, so we can send you this code. And I'm like, I really want that t-shirt. Sure, let's do this. 20% is pretty good. So it finally says, check your text. Okay, it sent it to my phone. It beeped and it booped. So I went to my phone and skimmed, and I clicked a link from this random contact. Granted, I had some context because I ordered the shirt, and I ordered the, I wanted that coupon code. So I just get from 8043, and I just click that link, and then I'm opening up the browser on my telephone, and there it is. There's the code, so I can copy it and do with it what I want. So then I go back to the site because I'm going to complete shopping, and then I don't see Spin to Win anymore. So that's great. So I went through this whole arc as a sighted user that can use, my hands. I use a keyboard and mouse, and that's how I experienced it. But let's rewind and go through that flow again with somebody that can only use a keyboard. So what does that look like? So let's go through this. So I go to Threadless first page. About 3 seconds in, this pops into the page. So what's really cool about this is they're using a keyboard trap. And if I'm just using my tab key, it immediately focuses on the ability to close it, or I can tab over and do the Spin to Win. So just a little bit about that. If you haven't done keyboard navigation, you use the tab key to go to the next actionable element. And ideally, or you can shift tab to go, you go tab to go forward, shift tab to go backward. And also, so I can either tab to the X and close, or I can hit the escape key, and that actually dismisses the modal. So that's actually a really good interaction for modals, is the ability to focus and close, and then to stay inside of that. Because what happens if I tab outside of it? This thing is still in the way, right? And so as a keyboard user, I'm now focusing on things behind it, and I want it to get out of my way. So that's they're doing a really good thing here with modals. So I worked with this I worked at Bounteous prior to this, and my friend Steve Woodson made this really cool website that I'm going to go to right now, and it talks about previous focus, and it talks about keyboard trap. And so what he's done is he has a before of what the problem is, and then an after, so you can actually experience this like on your own using these examples. And then he has the code comparison here, so you can see the exact code that he has. We'll skip past the styles, but really in the JavaScript, what he'll show you is the good stuff that you can add to your modals to make it more accessible. And what's really cool about this, I won't go completely through this. Again, Steve's done all the great work with the code examples, but the two things that I want to point out here is this prior focus. So what he's doing is he's setting this variable in JavaScript of the prior focus, and what he's done is he's taken the document.activeElement. So that was the thing that opened that modal. And some of you might think, hey, sometimes it's a button that opens up that modal, and so then that prior focus would need, after I close it, to go back to that button. But in the case of Threadless, it just interrupted me. It just came in at a certain time, so there is no prior focus. So at that point, as a developer, you can make a decision to say, what should I do for that prior focus? Should I just put it on the first actionable item in the body? Wherever I want to do that. But what you need to do is just be cognizant that if there was an action to open a modal and you close it, you really should go back to that previous action, or have kind of a backup plan for when it closes to just help the person that's experiencing the site to move on from that because you interrupted them. The last part about this too that I really like about the code was he's getting all the focusable items in that modal area. So he is setting up here, up here, go through this quick. He's saying, hey, this modal label is the ID of that modal. And so what he's doing is saying, give me every single thing that can take focus inside of that modal. And it's kind of a laundry list of things. And there's another example, DQ does it a little bit more. There's a DQ example. So I like Steve's example because it's very explicit. You're saying, I want a href, which is a link, or a select, or form items. So you can be pretty explicit in what you want. And then once you get all those things, you put them in an array, and then that allows you, as you hit the tab or the shift tab, it allows you to go through that. So it's the first stop. So it's looking at that array and saying, go to the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and then at the very end, the last tab stop is to then go back to the beginning. So it's a really cool way of putting previous focus back and staying inside of that modal. It's a really good trick. Thanks, Steve. You're awesome. So this is the other example that I was saying is DQ University. There's a lot more stuff in this code. What I liked about Steve's is it was very clear as to what changed in there. But DQ, this is a rock solid, simple alert dialog. So definitely check that out as well. So you might ask yourself, hey, why do we have to use JavaScript for these things? Doesn't HTML have that already? The answer is yes, but it's not quite ready. There's some really great links in here. Oh, I should have started out. I have all these slides out on my session page on the MidCamp site. So definitely, go to that PDF, download it, because these links are outstanding. But as you can see here, it's missing a few features for the dialog. So, someday we'll get to the point where we don't have to write this JavaScript. But until then, it's just not quite ready yet. So that was great as a keyboard user, right? So what happens for somebody that needs to use a screen reader? So how do they experience that? So what I'd like to do now is kind of pseudo live demo-y, but I have my volume turned up here, and I'm going to bring up the Threadless site. It's changed since I first built this for the XSU conference, so let me just go to threadless.com, because I did visit it today, and they've changed their homepage, so it'll be a little bit different. Let me turn on VoiceOver. So to turn on VoiceOver, a little bit about VoiceOver. VoiceOver is the screen reader that's default. If y'all have a Mac, you have this available to you. There's a shortcut because I have that lovely smart bar, not so smart bar. So I have to hold the command key down and hit the power 3 times, and that'll turn VoiceOver on. So a few more things about VoiceOver is it works best with Safari. So that's why I'm bringing Safari up. You get more consistent results with Screen Reader, VoiceOver, and Safari, but you can use it with Chrome or whatever. But that's why I'm using Safari here. Again, that's in my experience. I think I read that somewhere, but I don't have a source to cite. But when I do VoiceOver and I do VoiceOver testing, I use Safari. So let's turn on VoiceOver.
VoiceOver on Safari. Start page window. Toolbar. You are currently on a toolbar. To interact with the items on this toolbar, shop graphic 50% loaded. 19% sign up via text for offers. Frame. You are currently on a scroll area inside of web content. To begin it.
So I went to the site, and it lets me know that it kind of went kind of fast. But what I'm going to do now is that modal opened, and I'm going to hit the tab key, and you can't see the focus state, but let me hit the tab key.
Sign up via text for offers. Threadless. Web dialog entering sign up via text for offers.
So that's good, right? The modal opened. This is the first time I hit the tab key. I'm there.
Spin button. You are currently on a button.
So I'm now hitting the tab key again.
Close button.
So great, I'm trapped. So this is pretty cool. So it read out, it went kind of fast, but as the page loaded, this modal opened up and it read aloud that I had a way to win to get a 20% off discount. So let's actually spin it.
Spin button. You are currently on a button. To click this button, heading level, sign up via text for offers, frame. You are currently on a frame. To end, sign up via text for off, link, all, heading level 2 sign, 20% off. Your order. You are.
So what I'm doing now is I'm not using my tab key, I'm using the arrow keys, which actually read out content.
20% off, unlock, 20% your order. Edit text email field, new line. You are currently on a button. No, thanks, close, button. You are current.
So what I'm doing now is I just hit the tab key. So again, now it's the modal has changed, but I'm still trapped inside of there. So if I hit tab.
Email address, required edit text email field with autofill menu. To open, continue, button. No, thanks, button. You close, button. Email address, required edit text email field with autofill menu.
So there's a couple things that could have been a little bit better about this, right? The page refresh, it didn't really tell me until I started tabbing again. So there's probably a way, and the cool thing about Drupal is we have a Drupal announce. So that's a way that this feels kind of very Ajax-y, where it didn't do a full page refresh. So there's probably an opportunity where, as the context of the page changes, they could have announced that and let us know. But overall, they're doing a lot of pretty interesting, great things. I'm not going to sign up for another coupon code, but I just wanted to, point out how easy it is to just kind of turn this on. Take some practice, so I highly suggest playing around with it. There's some really great tutorials. I think I have that on the next slide, so I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But let me turn off VoiceOver.
VoiceOver off.
And let's go back to the slides. So one thing again, trying out Safari and VoiceOver, there's a really good pro tip that I have here. So if you go into the Safari advanced features, I like to have the checkbox of press tab to highlight each item on a web page. I don't know why that's not default, but there's probably some reason for it. But that allows you to tab, because when I first did this, I'm like, the tab key's not working. You have to tell it, I want to stop at all the tabbable, actionable things on the page. And then I like the show develop menu in the menu bar so I can inspect and take a look at some things. So as we experienced, the spin to win was pretty good. You'll notice that they're using an ARIA modal and ARIA label, and that's what read out. So actually, if we were to go back, it would say sign up via text for offers, threadless. So that's what's read out. Moving on from that, there are some outstanding code examples from the ARIA Authoring Practices Guide. So go to this link. On there it says not for production use, but it's really good, solid code. So it's another really good place to see examples of good modals. So we experienced this a few times. On the screen you'll see I have an image here where it looks like a couple standing there, and it says passion lettuce here, and I crossed it off and I said marketing lettuce here. So as we go through this, as developers, we have to work together. We have to work with marketing that has their sales needs and their ideas. We have to work with analytics, which tells us who's coming to the site, how are they experiencing the site, and it would be ideal to ask real users to see, are we getting in their way? But I was fortunate enough to work on something like this for a client. Again, I just used Threadless as an example, but we were able to build something like this in Drupal admin. So we worked with marketing, we worked with analytics over time to kind of provide these choices as we built this in Drupal. So the first choice that we gave the marketers was to select a time to pop. So we set ours for 5 seconds. As you saw, Threadless had it for 3 seconds. So that was really great. If there's some pages where they wanted them to experience it, or they're anticipating that they're going to scroll down and then pop, they can play with that timing, look at analytics, and see what's working and what's not. The next thing that we did was, you notice that after I did interact with that, I didn't see it anymore, so you're not just constantly interrupting them. And so we used cookies for that. But with GDPR, you have to be clear about what cookies, and granted it's tracking cookies, but still people can be funny about cookies. In this way, if we set that cookie, we're actually trying to help you out, so we're not always interrupting you. But another great way to do that is browser local storage. I'm a big fan of browser local storage, but again, if somebody is incognito browsing the site, that kind of blows away. And unfortunately, that's part of analytics, is that if we're constantly having these ads on the page, people might be bailing, right? The other things that we did was we just gave them a black box of whatever was in that modal, right? So in this case, it was Salesforce forms, but let's say that you had some other application that was like a random coupon generator, whatever. We're just like, this is a modal, it's going to behave, it's going to take all the actionable things, like whatever you put inside of it. And so we felt that was pretty robust and gave marketing a lot of powers. We hope they use them wisely. A few other things, we did display by URL path. So in this example, it was a lot of different sports. So it was like football, basketball, golf. And so we could say, I want anytime somebody goes into golf, I want a golf coupon versus that. So allowed them, each different marketer, to have different plans for different content. Special URLs from newsletters, we were able to kind of strip that from the top and then maybe not pop it. So we did some interesting things there. Another thing too was being able to set locale. This was a multilingual site, so they were able to market in their locale, talking dollars, talking pesos, whatever. And the last part was because of analytics, right? There was a high abandonment rate, like, what happened to this page? Everybody's leaving, they hate this. And they're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't pop it on this page, but we'll pop it in this context. So again, work with your analytics team, because we can build these powerful tools. If they use them in a bad way, there's a real impact. But again, I'll just say a little joke here, that spin to win was only for desktop. and that was another thing too for mobile. We made the decision that we didn't want to pop or interrupt people on mobile. They already have enough going on. They're pretty focused on what they're doing. So we made a decision to say, don't do this on mobile. But I said, or making a joke here from 2001: A Space Odyssey, HAL. Maybe they profiled me enough that they knew I was on my phone. They knew that I did this on desktop, but whatever. We live in strange times of tracking. But do we have to interrupt the user? We talked about, we didn't even really cover cognitive load of interrupting somebody that's actually going to shop on your site. So can we do this a different way? Does it have to be like this? I found some decent examples on some other sites where in the footer, they're very clear. They say subscribe. They're not tricking me into the phone number and email. They're saying save 10% on your next order. Like, that's pretty clear. It doesn't have to interrupt me, but it's always there in the footer. Another one, on the home page, they just tell me right away. They say use code free ship for free shipping. Unfortunately, on this site, they didn't have alt text on this. They used an image. Sad panda, but hey, they're trying. They're not, that's one option. And then this is another, I think a really great option is we're advertising, we can give them coupon codes in context. So they're in that shopping experience. We can actually have it in that shopping experience. Do we have to pop or interrupt them during their flow? So that is pop-ins and modals. Let me see how I'm doing on time. All right, next up, I'm going to talk about menus. And when I talk about menus, again, that mega menu. So what you see on the screen here is an example of mega menu. And this is a client that is using a module, a Drupal module that I help co-maintain. And it's called the TB Mega Menu module. And it stands for the best mega menu module. So as you go here, if you hover over, so on the screen you see a logo on the left with a bunch of top level navigation items. If you hover over new, you will see a tray opens up underneath it, and then there's more items inside of that. So what I'm going to do now is, the TB mega menu. And what's really cool about it is we have this where it's keyboard navigable. I think I said that right. And I'm going to do a little live demo, but as you tab, so as you open up the menu, you can tab into it. You can use up, down, left, right arrows to navigate it too, but we have this documented on our lovely module site. So as I go to the Holly Hunt site, I'm just going to start keyboard navigating. I'm hitting the tab key. I'm highlighting the logo. And as soon as I tab focus into new, it immediately opens up and expands the menu. If I hit tab again, I'm just cruising across that top level. Some menus, you would have to drop into the menu and then tab all the way through those links before you get to that next item. So we've done a really cool thing where all top menu items, you can just tab across and just kind of wayfind a little bit easier. If I want to get into that menu, I hit the down arrow, and now I'm in that first column. And if I keep hitting down, or now I could actually hit tab 2 because I'm now focused in this area. And so you can go up, down. If I use the right arrow, I'm going to go to the next column over. If I go back, so again, keyboard navigation, I'm able to kind of cruise and wayfind without being trapped into having to make selections all the way through and have it read out all those things. Just save time, I'm not going to turn on VoiceOver, but that's kind of how it goes. Is new is the first child in the menu. The second level, the parent. The first level is the parent, and then you have first child, which is the shop by category, and under shop by category, we have a third level. For TB Mega Menu, and I think in general, I think 3 levels of nav is probably enough. We don't really support 4 and 5. If you're really doing that, kind of ask yourself some hard questions of what you're doing. But that's kind of how it works. So yeah, if you just I'm just hitting the right arrow, and whenever I want to go in, I can go into it and kind of cruise across it. And then if I want to get out of it too, I hit escape. And when I escape, I'm focused back to the parent item in there. So again, focus states aren't the best on here, but if I go tab to the next, so again, wall covering, if I hit escape, I'm on wall covering, and if I hit tab again, I will go to rugs. So again, we're pretty proud of this module. It's pretty great. And we think that's a good way to keyboard navigate. That was the live demo portion. On the screen, you'll see a picture of my cat, Mikan, who was trying to be helpful, but yeah, that was just me being silly about the fear of a live demo. And yeah, Mikan's a funny, furry man. Menus are, really complicated. TB is just one way to do it. Olivero, Mike Herschel, him and a bunch of other really great people in the Drupal community built a really great Olivero menu that's very accessible. Mike wrote this Smashing Magazine article. Highly suggest reading it and checking it out. It talks a lot about the concepts that I just went through. You can also watch the session because he's a funny gentleman as well. And just kind of see the features of what we get by default just by using Drupal and that theme, the Olivero theme. Another great thing, back to this, these examples, this website that I'm very fond of is the ARIA Authoring Practices Guide. Again, not for production, but they give you some really good examples, and they talk through this keyboard navigation, like space and enter, right arrow, left arrow. So what I want to point out here is that there's two different examples, right? It's kind of the first example is what we're doing as well, is where you're going and it's on focus, it's going to open up. But there's kind of a problem with that, right? Is if I go to that first focus and go to open it, I can't really go to a new page, right? So that's kind of the issue with mega menus. And there's another pattern that's out there that's called the disclosure button. And so this gives a really good example. So as I was saying, is there isn't really a new page or a rugs page on that Holly Hunt site. But we could, if we did this, where about can on the screen, I'm on the disclosure button page, and I have about now highlighted, and then if I tab again, it's a disclosure button telling me that there's sub items inside of here, and I can open it and close it and make decisions about that. And again, allows me to cruise across the top. I don't have to go into each item. But once again, they explain like how to interact with it, and then they give you the code and examples, and it's a really good starting point. The last thing I'll say about menus is I find them with every team, UX has an idea of what they want. Design has an idea of what they want. Imagine this, your stakeholder is going to say, that's not how I thought the menu would work. So you got to have these conversations, having these examples, and get everybody to agree upon it. Otherwise, you're going to build something, and they're going to say, I hate this disclosure button. What is this thing? You have some options, and here's some really great code examples as that basic starting point to make those decisions. Moving on from menus is type ahead. So we're on the last part here. So when I talk about type ahead, on the screen what you'll see here is a input box that says country. And as I go to the next screen, I start typing UNI. And what that does is it gives me, it fetches and gives me 5 different countries that start with UNI. And then as I keep typing United, I went down from 5 down to 3 options. And then finally, I was able to find and select United States. So that's what I mean by autocomplete, and that's a typical interaction for type ahead. There is a great site that has a demo and has code for you, again, as a really great starting point. So it's the gov.uk design system has this already for you. So if you're tasked with building an autocomplete, this is a really great place to go and check it out. And there's different options too. I'm going to go to the demo site really quick. So there's some options here. For example, so imagine I'm using that screen reader, and every time I type, it reads it out. Imagine if we use if we give the user feedback that A, and then it says, here's a list of 100 countries. Let me start reading them off for you. And after every single time you type. So there's ways to say, only start getting me results after I type 2 characters to kind of limit that cognitive load. There's an overlay example, auto select. So they already have these, there's a default value. So if you wanted to use localization, say they're probably shopping in the US, we probably shouldn't have to make them scroll all the way to the bottom of a country's list to get that. So check out this site. It's really great. Code example is out there. So all these resources are really good starting points for you when you have these interactions. And also to share with your stakeholders so everybody's going, yes, we like how this autocomplete is working. We're all here because it's a Drupal conference. Drupal has this really cool thing called Drupal Announce. And it's an ARIA Live element on the page, and it's read aloud by screen readers. So as that page changes, we can tell people what is happening on there. So again, back to that threadless example of spinning to win, and then the page refreshed, there was an opportunity there where they could give me some feedback. You as Drupalists have this at your fingertips. So you just make this ARIA Live region, and it'll read it out at the completion of whatever task. And there's a link here for the documentation on it, which is pretty good. I can't say enough about this. I gave this presentation at Florida Drupal Camp, and then the next session was by Andy Bloom from Lullabot, going over a better example of Drupal Announce. So I kind of took that part out, and I'm like, just watch his examples, and I linked to his examples, because he did a really great job. It's 10 most useful libraries in Drupal 10 core. Outstanding session. Check it out. Even check out the slides. There's a really good demo where you can check it out. There's also a really cool article that I found by Jules Kong talking about Drupal Announce and screen readers. And once again, my buddy Stephen Woodson, he's an amazing person, and he really does love coffee that much. I will say that. Super passionate about coffee. But he also on his site has a really cool place where it's not just in Drupal. You can just play around with how ARIA Live regions work. So what are some concerns, right, when we have an autocomplete? So we already talked about those number of results returned being way verbose, limiting it. So there might be 100, but maybe we should only, limit that to the top 5 or something, and then let them know that there's still much more. One of the things is talk to your users, please, 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 because you might be saying, I can tell them all the things of what's going on this page, and they really probably don't care, and it might be getting in the way of their tasks that they're trying to accomplish. So you can be too verbose. You could also just not have enough information on there. So it's a really tough balance. Providing context for those results. So if it's just numbers, it's probably good if I'm shopping for like number of flights or dollars. Like provide that context. Don't just say 20, when it reads it back. Give them that context for the results. And then just cognitive load. As I said, it can be pretty overwhelming, and just talk to your users. That is it, and I'm open for some questions. I think I have a little bit of time, but does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
You talk about accessibility. There's different levels of accessibility, like 1, 2, whatever it is, right? Which level are you talking about?
Yeah, so the question was what level of accessibility? So there's WCAG criteria, and there's level A, which is basic, must-have. Double A is should have, and triple A, I'm totally getting this wrong, but basically you should shoot for double A, and that's on the sites that I work on. We aim for double A. Triple A is the nice to have, but A is base level, must. Double A is really what we should all be aiming for, and then triple A is if you have users and requirements for it, you know, does that help answer it? So when we're talking about these components, you absolutely need to test that and go through WCAG criteria. I didn't really scrub these against like the interaction versus a WCAG failure, just because they're complex here. That would probably be a good add to this, is to say, when this happens, you're failing this criteria, right? So I'm not like addressing it. All the things that I code in all these examples are really aiming towards that AA, I would say, interactions.
Is there a tool that you would recommend to test that?
For testing, yeah.
Or besides the Ally tool?
Yeah.
Or the plugin?
Plugin, there's some really great, there's Wave. The cool thing about Chrome is it comes shipped with Axe, which is a testing tool. So those are things that you can run in the browser, but manual testing is always a good way, like just keyboard tabbing through and making sure. There's some quick check websites too. There's plenty of resources. Actually, if you give me your information, I could share some resources with you. But there's plenty of browser plugins to help run it through, but those aren't enough. Like just saying, oh, it passes 100%, you're still gonna miss some criteria. But they're a great guideline. I use those and am very humbled. Like I still feel very new to accessibility, but using those tools, I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot, you know, some alt text here. I just had a placeholder and it catches me and keeps me honest through it. So using those tools are great, and iteratively, whenever you're going to go ship something, you want to ship that accessible code. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you for all the examples. I always like, you know, we always learn my own, trying to get towards the next latest greatest idea. Am I doing it right? But whenever trying to do a redesign for a site, I always want to try to, you know, future-proof it enough so that I'm not always doing a library that, oh, now it's using this old, 100 lines of code which should be down to 10. So I just kind of know what is wrong necessarily specifically with using the dialogue HTML element, or even like the new inert CSS property, which does the keyboard trapping just with one attribute versus a whole bunch of scripting. So is it good to use those now, or do I need to wait another 6 months, a year until our supports?
The question is, when should I use? You want to stay on the front you want to stay ahead of shipping accessible code. Like, when is it safe to use what feature? And I have a good answer: analytics. So look at your analytics and see what those users are using and use that as a guidepost. What I showed on there is that it's not ready yet is due to some of the browser support. So that would be it. The other thing about accessibility is there's not one solution. You notice I didn't just like have a GitHub to say, this is how you do modals all the time. Because, really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So what I wanted to do is challenge you with, I have these really great code examples as I was building things that were really good guideposts, but talking to UX designers, talking to the stakeholders, they might want something that's just a little bit different, and then I have to scrub that, make sure I'm passing AA WCAG standards. So there's always a wrinkle in there. It's never code here. This is my modal. It's going to work great over here. Even the TB Mega Menu module, it has opinions on it. So like for a mega menu, we're opinionated on it, but we don't have that disclosure button as an option. So long answer to it is it's always a moving target. You're going to read an article and be like, oh my gosh, I just did that last week, and they're saying you shouldn't do it this way. And you're like, they're absolutely right. I didn't think about this condition. But hopefully I broke down kind of some of the basics of like modals, how you're interrupting people, how to dismiss them in a safe way. Same with menus. Oh, I forgot to mention, there was a really good talk yesterday, an accessible talk by Jan Wild. She talked about mobile criteria. And so some of the things that were on there was like a mega menu covers some things, and if you just left that open, you would never see the content underneath it. So she also has some very mobile specific failures, and it was a really great session, so I highly recommend checking out that session. But that's another one where I was in there, I built this presentation, I've been talking about menus for a long time, and I'm learning all the time. I am pig. So, yes?
Yeah, I have a question. So, in your mega menu, how are users being announced via voiceover? For example, there's 2 columns, right, in the sub-menu?
Great question. So the question is, how does on VoiceOver, how do you know there's columns and what's in the page? So I could actually bring that up and do that, but how we do that is unordered lists. So we have the cool thing about HTML, and a lot of things about accessibility can be solved by just using natural HTML in the right way. So if y'all want to be accessible right from the start, write valid HTML. You're like half the battle is won right there. So for a menu option, right? All that's on there, if we were to just take out the JavaScript, it's just a bulleted list with parents and children in there. So as I go in, I have that first list, and it says, oh, you know, there's a unordered list here that has 5 items. And so in that second, as I focus on that, it's the parent, and it's saying, hey, this next thing has 5 children underneath it. Do you want to explore it? No, go to this next column. So it's, the other thing I'll say about accessibility is it comes down to just setting the expectation. If you ever feel lost, or you feel like this is just too hard, just try and think about how can I best set the expectation for what's inside of this thing that I'm building. Like a video, right? So what is the expectation I can give if I'm going to have a video? Probably tell them that it's 30 minutes long, you're making a commitment, right? Maybe offer it in a different way, like a transcript, so I could skim through it, maybe fast forward to minute 12, right? So as you're doing accessibility, as we're building these things, just ask yourself, what can I do to help that user set those expectations? And menus is a great, like all the way back to your question, Adrian, is like, I'm opening this thing, holy crap, it's got 50 things. Next, like, allow me to skip past it. That's why carousels, right, are kind of controversial. You get trapped inside of a carousel, and you have to go through all 50. You know, it's like sitting through your grandparents' slideshow of their trip, right? I want to get out of here. Like, if I knew I was doing this, maybe I wouldn't stop by Grandma's house. That's a horrible, horrible example. But you get what I'm saying. So carousels are like a trip to your grandparents' house. That's what I'm trying to say. Any other questions? All right, well, thanks everybody. The presentation's up there. Enjoy those links. Build some really cool, accessible things. I'm excited to see what you build. Thanks everybody.